Well met. This has been Brode, and you're watching Born to be
Cosmo.
Oh, snap.
Welcome to Born to be Cosmo, the podcast where we talk about all things Marvel Snap. And Marvel Snap definitely gives us a lot to talk about. And I'm trying my best to not swear, but I would say that this week might be the mother load. So let's get into it. But before we do, I just want to say hello and introduce our two co-hosts and show mainstays. Wouldn't do it without them. Nate Wolf, ZombiesGoNomNom. This is a day of days to have our flexibly scheduled podcast. Would you not agree?
Oh yeah.
For sure. Yeah, big lot of happenings in the Marvel Snap world. Marvel Snap has never gotten as much press as they have gotten probably in the last week or so.
It's been a week, that's for sure. Yeah.
If you've been living under a rock or have opened up this podcast a year from when it was recorded, specifically what happened this past week was, Donald Trump was sworn in as the 47th president of the United States. Is it 47? I don't know. I'm not an American, so forgive my ignorance. There's been a lot of talk in U.S. government, even before Trump's ascendancy, about banning TikTok in the United States. Although, and apparently a law was passed and it was set to go into effect imminently. And ByteDance, the company targeted in this legislation, basically went dark in anticipation of this law coming into effect. And it turns out that, and I feel like this is going to be a bit of a leap, Second Dinner, the company that makes the game Marvel Snap, is published. They have a publisher. That publisher is Newverse, for those who play Marvel Snap, the website, the whole web store thing. Might be a familiar feature for you. That's Newverse. And Newverse is owned by ByteDance, who is targeted in this anti-TikTok legislation.
ByteDance owns TikTok, yeah.
Yeah, ByteDance owns TikTok. So Marvel Snap literally went dark. And this happened 8 days ago. And I remember I was sitting on the couch. It was, I'm in Pacific time. So it's a Saturday night, it's getting on in the evening. It's like 9:30. And I receive a message from my friend and friend of the show, NHL and JFan1, saying, Marvel Snap got banned because of the TikTok ban. And I thought he was joking, right? And then I started getting all these alerts, and I opened up Blue Sky and Twitter, and sure enough, it was not a drill. And
that was a moment.
so this is what happened. For those that were in the United States, when you tried to launch Marvel Snap, you'd get a message saying, sorry, Marvel Snap isn't available right now. A law banning Marvel Snap has been enacted in the US. Unfortunately, that means you can't use Marvel Snap for now. Rest assured, we're working to restore our service in the US. Please stay tuned. So not only were you blocked from it, it also was delisted from the apps, the iOS App Store and the Google Play Store. And people who didn't know what was going on, they contacted Second Dinner support. They're like, "Oh, you can't launch your game. Try uninstalling and reinstalling." And now those people still 8 days later can't access Marvel Snap.
Feels bad.
I'm a Canadian, so I was completely unaffected. Other than just kind of watching the bonfire. But ZombiesGoNomNom and Nate Wolf are both red, white, and blue Yanks, although I'm not sure I can call Zombies a Yank anymore without doxing him. So yeah, tell me a little bit about your experiences and kind of like some of the technical wizardry you did to circumvent it, and what are you still is there still like any, like, you guys did delete the app, so
No.
spoilers.
I'll
but,
go first because Zombies
yeah.
had a major like Twitch uptick right during the week.
Yeah.
So
that's
here's
true.
for me, all I did was temporarily relocate to Mexico via Tunnel Bear. So in my mind I was like, you know what? Every time, like, we'll probably get some form of meager compensation, which may get better depending on how long this thing is offline. But if I've learned anything from this game over the past couple years, it's like when something goes sideways, like, take advantage of it, because otherwise, like, you'll miss out. And we had that daily login thing going on, and I was like almost done with it. I'm like, I don't want to miss the last couple of days of this, and so I just used Tunnel Bear. And for me, nothing changed. I mean, I had already hit infinite, so I was just doing my dailies, but I just used the VPN to get in. I did not uninstall. I saw somebody posted that they were freaked out that this thing was like gone for good and made a request to
refund.
A refund request. Now they're negative 7,000 gold.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
I was like,
yeah.
sheesh, man. I don't.
I've
But-
always been surprised that's how they handled it, because a lot of other companies, like if you did it in Hearthstone, I'm pretty sure they just ban you. Like a lot
I
of,
think
if
you
you
get a
charge
negative
back in
gold
most
balance
games,
in Hearthstone. Remember
Oh,
that
really?
that person
It might
who was like
depend.
scamming
Yeah.
arena tickets got a negative gold
Well,
balance?
that's for like bug abusing, right? They
Yeah,
were abusing
okay.
a bug in the game, but I'm pretty sure from like I'm pretty sure I've read about this and this is pretty normal, I think, in most digital games like this, where they reserve the right to terminate your account if you like issue a chargeback.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Blizzard, I think Magic does that. Maybe, I don't know. It's a normal thing. So I have always found it interesting how Second Enter really doesn't want to ban people from playing their game if they're not even banning you after like you charge back. They just give you a negative gold balance.
So here's the thing that I think is interesting. Like, I was largely unaffected because, I mean, I was able to get in anyways, and I was surprised at how quickly they were able to get it back online. I mean, really, it was
Yeah, it was
only,
like 2 days.
Yeah, it was like
2
a day
days.
and a half, 2 days.
Yeah.
And so in my mind, and I, you know, and then they posted something in the Discord asking, you know, what questions people had about the,
Stuff surrounding it.
you know, and like the number one question I was seeing was like compensation, and people were, I was like,
Yeah.
well, in my mind, what I always think about from the legal perspective is the TOS. Basically, like, you're playing a digital game, like, you don't own anything.
Yeah, we don't own any of this stuff.
You're purchasing a license for this stuff, and so like if the game dies, so does your
it's gone.
like all your
Yeah.
stuff. It's not physical product, like, so all these variants that people spend $1 million on and stuff, like, cool. It's a you know, NFT basically.
Yeah, it's a
right?
limited thing, right? Like it's one of those things where this is the way the gaming landscape has shifted a lot. I mean, this is just a normal thing now.
Well, I
And
just think it made people feel vulnerable, right? That like, hey,
yes, 100%. That's the thing is
I've
you
spent
do not want people
$1,000
to
or how
think
many?
about that.
Yeah, I've spent a ton of money,
Right?
and it's just gone in a snap. Like,
It's like, yeah, that's why people get like get into like the sunk cost of the game, is because
oh
like
gosh,
I've
yeah.
spent all this money in the game, so I don't want to, even if like you want to quit or something, like, well, but then all the money I've spent is it's gone. I'll never get it back. But I mean, I think a lot of people are okay with like accepting the fact that it's like you're essentially just paying for entertainment and
Well,
like your time. But like you bringing that up is an important point, because these live service games that are selling you these digital goods, that is the last thing they ever want anyone buying something in their game to think about. You do
yeah.
not want to remind people that they are paying you for pixels that are tied to a server that will eventually go away. Because as soon as people are not only aware that that can happen, but have a little bit of a glimpse into what it might be like, that could happen sooner than they think, suddenly it makes people really skittish about putting dollars into your game.
Well, and that's probably why the compensation is what it is.
Definitely.
Because for me, I think it's like, do we really? Like,
they would not give all this stuff for 2 days of outage if it was
yeah.
just like AWS going down or something.
Yeah, because I thought, especially 2 days. Like if it was gone for a week or more or whatever, like, it's like, okay, well, compensation.
And I guess it
would be
is a
pretty
week
big,
for
but
some people. If you deleted the app, you're still locked out.
Well, that sucks, but
yeah, and I know many people who did that. Some people did it because they were suggested to by the support. Other people did it because it's just a troubleshooting thing, like turn it off and on, reinstall the app, whatever. But yeah, if you're one of those people who's locked out, or if you're waiting to be able to like purchase in app again or whatever, next week is when that is expected to happen, and then that's when we're going to get the compensation, and
yeah,
we'll talk about that more later.
Yep. So I think that's why the compensation, right, is what it is to kind of reassure people, like, hey, no, don't think about your stuff going away. Come back.
Also, it's a good way to capitalize on the publicity a bit, to be like, hey, if you have a US based account and you stop playing Marvel Snap or giving all this stuff out as a result of this, you can get it too. It's like, I think they decided to I think they boosted it further to try and take advantage of the publicity.
Yeah.
Like, in addition to trying to fix or like help mend the lack of, or like the damage to consumer confidence.
One thing that this outage really kind of made me realize, and this is it almost seems tangential, but it really did surprise me. And I think that I might be revealing my age a little bit here, but I was really surprised how many people really struggled with the outage from a technical conceptual perspective. Like they didn't understand what was going on, like thinking, oh, I gotta charge back my purchase, or not knowing how to use a VPN to circumvent it, which is frankly, it's not exactly computer hacking. It's
No,
you
not at all.
download a piece of software and you press a big red button. It works pretty much the same way on a computer as it does a phone, and like
It's very,
you know
very easy to do. Yeah.
and so, it used to be that when I was a child, it was always assumed that the younger you were, the more technically literate you were. And this continued to be true. You might be the last of that, zombies, not to out your
Yeah.
age, but like I feel like at a certain point, technical literacy, like with the advent of like the iPhone in 2007, like technical literacy kind of just like fell off a cliff. And now the generations coming up after, are not as technically literate as those that came before, and we saw that with the snap outage. And this was to your benefit, zombies, because a lot of people that otherwise would have been streaming weren't. So when your livelihood is Marvel Snap streaming, or it's something that's really important to you, to basically kind of just throw in the towel and say like, oh well, service is down, I'm out. I mean, that sucks, but you had a really bumper week because of
Yeah,
the
I'll
extra
say.
attention, and the fact that you put on a quality stream, and people who discovered you stuck around, which is really encouraging to see. But yeah, so your experience was not negative, really. It was pretty
No, it was
positive.
good. If there's only one thing I regret, it's before doing that, not reaching out to a VPN company for a sponsorship.
uh,
That's the only
yeah,
thing I regret.
yeah,
Is
people
I can't tell you how many times I said the word VPN over a 20 or 48-hour period. I
when
had it pinned in the chat. Nobody read the pin.
when I was in your chat and I was like telling people which VPNs to use, do you know how many people DM'd me on Twitch? Like,
Really?
you got to help me out. Can you help me out? And like I
That's
helped
so
one or
funny.
two people out, and finally I
I
was
did
like,
not know that.
no, like, geez,
Just
man,
Google it,
like,
bro. It's easy. It's
yeah.
it's not VPN. Setting up a VPN is not. Once you know which ones are free, if assuming you don't want to pay for one, that's really all the work. You just download the app and you press the button. It's not.
Or
You
like
really don't need any kind of computer literacy to do it.
people were saying like, oh, I can't use a VPN because my internet sucks. It's like, no, you just need the VPN for the
Yeah,
launch, and you could
some
turn it
people were
off.
confused about. Some people thought it was only something you could do on PC. You couldn't do it on mobile, but it's like no, it works on
Man.
mobile. I mean, I have a younger sister who's like we're 5.5 years apart, and I think though she does have a fair bit of tech literacy, I do think like it has like declined in terms of I don't know. I remember just like there was much more interest in like myself and people I knew when we were like younger diving into all of the computer stuff as it was like rapidly evolving and everything. But I know in some ways like I think part of it is just like you're getting older and you don't want to like learn new things there's just like that natural barrier to like wanting to learn something new that you don't know.
I mean, sure, but this isn't learning something. You're not like modding a console or
No, I know, but people, if you don't have any experience with it, I think a lot of people think it's like this more complex thing than it is. Because like so much technology is now so streamlined and user friendly and does all this stuff for you. It's I'm surprised they weren't asking an AI about it. All right, ChatGPT, how do I play Marvel Snap even though it's banned in the United
Oh my
States?
gosh.
Or there's a lot of, and then also like setting up a stream too. Like a lot of people like pay other people money to install and configure OBS for them. And it's like, really? Like,
Yeah,
okay. I don't
it's
know. It was a
I
real shock to
could
me.
get it a
That's all.
little bit in terms of I like fiddling with all the OBS stuff. The thing I absolutely hate is the dealing with the sound. I eventually got all that sorted out and Lee helped me a little bit too. But yeah, like sometimes there's just like an aspect of something you just really dislike. And so you could do it, but like I even though I enjoy doing it, I get why not why people some people just they have like that I don't want to have to like I just want it to work. I just want it to work and it's worth more to me to get someone to set that up than to figure it out myself, even though it really is not hard to figure this stuff out most of the time. But yeah, the band brought in a ton of people. It was during drops too, by the way.
Oh,
It was
yeah, that's
during
right.
drops. It was at the end of drops, so it was like a double overlap. I also think part of the reason some people weren't streaming it was because I think some people just took that weekend off because it was like a long weekend and they were traveling or doing other things. And so I was put in a position where I was at the top of the category for like a lot of the weekend. I did a 7-hour stream and do a 15-hour stream and do a 12-hour stream on like Saturday, Sunday, Monday. And I think, yeah, the Sunday one is the biggest stream I ever had. That was crazy. It was like 15 and a half hours, average viewers of 748, and I had like 20,000 live viewers. That's crazy. I've never had
You
like
were
a
sitting
fraction
over
of
a
those numbers.
thousand, over
Yeah,
a
for a lot of the
thousand
day. That's
for
748 average over the 15-hour period.
Wow.
yeah.
So
Wow.
it was a lot. It was a lot, and I have also changed my schedule, and I think that has helped too because there are less people streaming Snap in the morning and early afternoon, and I wanted to change my schedule for a lot of things anyway, and so I was like, all right, I'll try this schedule change, and that's been good. And so this week I've been doing Monday through Friday snapping for like 6 hours from like 10 to 4, 10 to 5, and it's been good. I mean, the numbers obviously go down after the drops and after the controversy ends and whatever, but it's still a lot of it does feel like there's been a tiny bit of a bounce back from the declining numbers. I think the numbers are still in general down on Snap compared to where they were like 6 months ago. Um, but I think you're seeing a little bit of a bounce back, but I think that's all short term stuff. The compensation's great. We'll talk about that, but I think the big thing, and I don't think anything's going to change this, that is going to either like sink the online community around it or make it bigger and thrive, is however they end up handling the acquisition rework stuff sometime this year.
Yeah, I hadn't played much Snap this month, and it was funny because during the outage, apparently it was like bot city, and everyone was
Oh
like,
yeah, because they're just less
you should
players.
climb," and I didn't because I had other things going on. But no, just watching you stream it every day, kind of renewed my interest in it, and also knowing that over the horizon there's a big loot bag
That
for
helps too.
even the non-US snappers.
Yeah, everyone's getting something, so that's nice. It's I mean, second inner usually does pretty all right with compensation. The thing that's always annoyed me in the past is like it annoys me when they lowball compensation and then the community kind of drags it out of them. Like the ones that stick out to me with that were like the Gambit situation and the Splitgate stuff.
Yeah.
They both of those times, the initial compensation offered was just bad and not really worth it compared to the damage done. Like to how bad the issue was, the compensation wasn't nearly adequate. But the final result was, I think, both times probably fair or more than adequate. Especially more than adequate with like the Gambit's case. That one was pretty huge. So it's like they eventually get there, but I've long said it'd be nice if we could just skip that pulling teeth phase of them trying to lowball and then the art of the deal it. But yeah, they didn't do that this time around, which is good because I
The
don't think
art
they
of
could
the
have.
deal it.
Yeah, it's
Very,
like
very
we
good.
start low, so that way they don't get our real highest offer. And it's like, yeah, I get it, but like you're gonna piss a lot of people off doing that, and I don't think they could afford to with a situation like this. So they went harder than I think even the most optimistic people probably expected from what I've seen. And as a result of it, I like 99% of people are more than happy with the stuff we're gonna be getting as a result of the things that went down. And maybe more importantly, we're gonna see Second Dinner end up with a new publisher at some time in the
The new
future.
era of Marvel
Yeah, they're
Snap.
branding it as this new era of Snap, and I've actually been working on a presentation I want to
Snap
give
2.0.
on uh, basically I had someone in my chat ask like, "Hey, what does a publisher do?" And I was like, that's a great question, and I don't have all the like I know I have a general sense of what a publisher does. I was like, I'm gonna look into this and I'm gonna make a little presentation about it. And
Nice.
so I've got like 20 slides on it, and I'm gonna do it on stream sometime this week and maybe turn it into a YouTube video. But I dived into like, hey, what do gaming publishers like actually do? How's that world been going and changing?
Typically,
And then
so let
how's
me
it relate
ask
to
you
Snap?
this. Let me
Mhm.
ask you this question then. My perception of a game publisher is really in the paradigm that existed before mobile gaming. So I think the big
Yes.
question that everyone has is how much of an influence does the publisher have on the game economy? Because my I suspect, I don't know, is that it would be minimal, but perhaps I'm completely basing that on incorrect assumption.
So the thing is, I don't think there is an industry standard answer to that. I think it varies per company and per publisher and like the game. Like I don't think from what I saw, the relationship a publisher has with a game is I more so broke down like the reasons you would use a publisher because I think the kind of like the rates they have and the percent cut I think it's all very relative to like the context of the individual deal. I don't think there's a like, and unfortunately, we do not have. If there is good information about that out there, I have not found it. For
Mm.
the one thing I do know is that both publicly and some not so publicly stuff, Second Dinner has always tried to posture it that they are the ones making the financial decisions. They have gone out of their way to be like, hey, the buck ends with us in terms of like no one is forcing us to make decisions in terms of how we're pricing our product. We are the ones who have that final say. And I've always believed that. Like, I don't think they have they don't have an incentive to not be truthful about that. I mean, they could be, or it could be like a secondary factor, right? Like, yes, they have the final say, but part of what goes into their final say is determined by how much percentage they're giving to Newverse out of their sale. Because they're already getting Marvel's getting their cut, and I'm sure Marvel's getting the biggest cut. If they're making money through Steam or the app stores, they're taking 30%. There are a lot of hands going into the Marvel Snap cookie jar. And I think Newverse is the smallest hand. Like I would imagine, I'm almost positive they're smaller than the App Store cut. Because that's why they want you to buy on the web shop, because the web shop is run by Newverse. Newverse definitely getting its cut, but they've said multiple times that's how they get a larger piece of the pie is if you buy through the web store because they don't have to pay the percentage fee. So we know it's certainly less than the 30% that is taken by traditional storefronts
Huh.
like Steam and Google and iOS. So that's one thing. But it's kind of interesting because publishers, not to give away the whole little presentation, but the publishing industry has changed a lot because originally, before we had mobile games, before we had a digital first gaming kind of economy, um, a huge part of a publisher was like getting your physical games made and printed and shipped to a store, and they helped you deal with retail.
Distribution, yeah.
Yeah, like distribution was a massive part of it. And now that is not a part of it at all for a ton of publishing. Like it still is for like big, games that still have physical, but so much of the gaming space is digital now. And as a result of that, we've also had the rise of self-publishing, and self-publishing has gotten a lot bigger. Like you don't need, because the physicality of it isn't as important anymore. The other stuff a publisher does really is advertising the product. Um, and then also a big role of publishers a lot of the time is providing initial funding for a game so the developers can have a salary and make ends meet while they're creating the game before it comes out. Like those are the two big things publishers still do. The physicality aspect was a huge part of it, and I mean, I'm sure it still matters for much larger game releases, but relative to the grand scale of all the games being made, like publishers are just advertising and helping pay for the product. And so it's changed quite a bit over time. But I think Second Dinner might have realized that this is a golden opportunity to potentially, so like they're doing these more generous things right now. Like they're calling this the new era of Marvel Snap. The compensation's really good. They updated the Galactus weekly spin thing. Now it's a daily thing, and the rewards are better. I don't know how long that will last. Publishers also just, they help grease the wheel a bit with like different storefronts, kind of like I'm sure Marvel Snap doesn't want to deal with setting up their own payment processing system, and that's something Newverse handles through the web store. So like there are things like that. Newverse handles the creator program. Like there's a list of things that like we know that Newverse does. But really, what it comes down to is they it's mainly advertising, and running the web store, like, and some of the little events in game. Um, like the collector's chest thing that happened like 2 weeks ago or whatever, or the current Dark Avengers thing with Null and X-23. Like that's basically what they do. They're in charge of advertising and the web store, and yeah, like some of the event stuff like Creator Clash and all that. Those are the big things they do. I'm sure there's more stuff that they do that we don't know about, but in terms of like a public list, that's what we know what they do. And it was funny. I kind of, someone in my chat pointed this out to me. Initially, they edited their tweet when Snap
Oh
went
yeah.
down, and some people were like, "Oh, what are you talking about? Or what are you trying to say?" It's like I'm not trying to draw any crazy conclusion, but I think it did line up with what eventually happened, which originally uh, they said this is a surprise to Second Dinner and our publisher Newverse. And then they edited it and it said this outage is a surprise to us and wasn't planned. They cut Newverse out of it. They cut Newverse out of the updated message. And so I don't know if that means maybe Newverse did know and didn't communicate it to Second Dinner. Or maybe that's just them posturing. They don't want to put like keep Newverse under their umbrella if they're going to announce very shortly
Well,
after this, like, hey, we're gonna be looking for a new publisher. Because
it,
like we already knew Newverse was not gonna stay forever. I mean, we had that article in 2023 where it said they were winding down Newverse. A bunch of people thought like Newverse wasn't even working with Second Dinner anymore. Like I had a bunch of people confused about that. They were like, "Wait, I thought Newverse was closing down like 2 years ago." It's so there's been a lot of confusion about the publishing side of things. And
yeah.
ultimately, I don't think most of it matters. But what I think does matter, and this is like one of the larger points, is I don't think I don't think Newverse is the one that was in control of the financial situation. But Second Dinner has a really good opportunity to lean into that being the case.
Right.
Uh, because naturally, and this happens in all types of gaming communities, even non-gaming stuff. But when you have and I'm not even using the meme here, when you have a small indie company, which I mean, by definition, that is what Second Dinner is, right? It's a small indie company. And then you have a publisher that's handling some of the money making aspects. gamers love small indie companies. They like rooting for the little guy that's not the AAA corporation run by Bobby Kotick or whatever nameless, faceless CEO that has billions of dollars. They like, rooting for a smaller company. And it oftentimes is framed in a way where it's like, yeah, they're really passionate and they're not held back by the evil business people trying to squeeze money out of you. And then on the flip side, the publisher is always the one that is viewed as like the evil Scrooge McDuck one who's trying to extract all the money. But the funny thing is that's really not the reality of the case a lot of the time. I think from what I've seen, I have every reason to believe Second Inner is the one making the decisions on pricing. Maybe the relationship with Newverse and maybe there were some factors there that could have contributed to their final decision, but I think they have a golden opportunity to lean into the framing that most people naturally take, which is the bad people trying to make money were part of the publisher, and now they're getting a new publisher, and so they can make a whole new era of Snap where things are less expensive. And who knows how
Don't
much of that
hold.
they
So
do,
I'm
but
not going to hold my breath. Is
yeah, I don't think
basically
anyone
the
should, but
TLDR.
they are doing good
Maybe.
things. They're leaning into it a bit, and I don't know when they're gonna get the publisher. I don't know how long these things take. It sounds like they're really trying to fast track that, because again, we don't know all the roles that the publisher has, and the unban of TikTok and ByteDance, like, that's been a temporary stay. That might not be the case if they don't come to a deal
30,
with the United
30,
States.
30 days. Yeah,
I think
and
it was 90.
apparently
I thought it was
90.
90 days.
All
Yeah.
right. Well,
It's a while, but yeah, they wanna figure it out, and they should figure it out, and they made it very clear that they don't want this to ever happen again. And I mean, it was always gonna, like, I don't know, they always needed to separate from Nuverse at some point because Nuverse was getting out of the gaming space, so this was
yeah.
always gonna happen. It's just now it got, uh, pushed up forward, and Second Dinner also said they're gonna bring some stuff in-house too. They said
Maybe like
even
a
though
web
there's
shop.
yeah, even though they're searching for a new publisher, it sounds like they plan to pick up some of the roles that Newverse was doing in-house, and who knows, maybe that'll be a good thing. It
Yeah.
depends what those roles are and what they do, but you never know.
Well, until that happens, we have some generous compensation to consider, so we may as well dive into that a little bit. Before we give the specifics, I think that this was handled pretty well. This was not easy to handle because you're kind of in this damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, whereby
Mhm.
do you just compensate people who are impacted? That is to say, people in the United States, or do you give everyone the same compensation, even though others were disproportionately,
It's like the
impacted?
Splitgate stuff, right? Remember when they gave
Yeah,
everyone the same thing, and some people were more mad because they were like, "Hey,
yeah.
I spent a lot of money. I lost out on this more than other people did."
So they gave everyone who wasn't affected a lot of stuff, a crap ton of stuff, and then they gave the people who were affected like
Even more.
even more crap ton of stuff. So everyone's getting a lot. Now, as someone who's not getting the full amount, I'll be honest. I'd like more, but I mean,
Yeah, you see the US one, it's like, "Oh, yeah,
but
that's
I
good."
think that like it was everything is proportionately or relatively so much that I haven't seen any negative feedback. I saw a few snotty comments on Reddit, but I mean, generally speaking,
It's
there's always
literally like I've never seen such a it's like universally positive reception. Like not
although
even just positive, but like wow, people being like, wow, this is significantly better than what I expected.
if we got nothing, I'd be pissed. But but I should say that there's no like logical grounding in that. The reason is that the game's so expensive and I'm so behind. I just want free stuff. So my desires here is very selfish. I think most people probably are in a similar boat. They just, for obvious reasons, don't want to admit that aloud or even to themselves.
Hey,
But
this is the price you pay for free healthcare.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
fair enough. It's not free, taxes and such, but
true. Well,
yeah.
the price you pay of not having to deal with our system.
Well, funny enough, that having to deal with and we don't want to get into politics, but it's funny, we can't avoid them anymore.
No,
because
now they're
Snap
part
got
of
caught
Marvel
up.
Snap.
Yeah, ridiculous. So let's review the compensation. I think we've been dancing around it enough. I don't have it memorized. And so
I got it up on
I
the
guess
screen.
there's four buckets. So I'll explain the buckets. There's basically U.S. compensation and non-U.S. compensation, and then that compensation is divided into two sub-levels: those who are above collection 500 and those who are below. Collection level 500 is when you hit series 3, or when you
it's when you get Series 3 and you get access to the token shop and
so brand new players.
Yeah.
Brand new players aren't gonna get this, but
They
the
get
bulk
different
of people
stuff, yeah.
listening to us or interacting with this content, I think
most
will.
people. I think if you're looking at Marvel Snap, like it takes you under a week, I think, to get to collection level 500. You get to 500 really fast. It might just be a few days.
So for US based players, the US downtime package for those with collection level over 500 includes 2 spotlight keys, 5,000 season pass XP. That's a lot.
So 5 levels, yeah.
4,150 credits.
What a random number.
6,200 collector tokens. 1,000 gold. 5 gold conquest tickets. I love that. 3 infinite
something we can
conquest
complain
tickets.
about.
Yeah, it's fine. 4,000 conquest medals. Pretty good for those of us that don't mess with conquest. 1 mystery variant. 6 premium mystery variants. 1 red cosmic border. 3 cosmic gold borders. And 5 times 155 random boosters, or specifically, that's the total number of boosters needed to split a card. So I think the big one here, 6,200 tokens, so everyone gets a free card. 4,150 credits. You'll get to split that new card a few times, basically. So
it's
and
huge.
then
It's a lot of
2
stuff.
spotlight. Yeah, it's a lot. I mean,
it's a lot of stuff.
if you were to
The
buy
6
all this,
variants is crazy too. Like I mean,
this
they went
is
harder
like
on the
$200.
progression than the cosmetic stuff, but they still went pretty hard on the cosmetic stuff. And what was nice is, and we'll see that when we look at the non-US stuff, but when they cut it down for the non-US stuff, but they cut it more down on the cosmetic side than they did the progress side, which I think is good. Like I think if you're giving people stuff, like I think the thing most people want the most is progress for getting
the tokens was considerably less as well, but
just like percentage wise though.
It's still a lot, like relative, but so let's maybe pull up
It's
the
good.
non-US
It's very good.
for someone who is impacted in the US. I mean,
no one expected that much. Like even I think the most optimistic people would not have. I think if I think if you posted like half of that, a lot of people would have laughed at you. Like for real.
Yeah, so I mean, for the non-US based ones, so 2 spotlight keys, so that's the same. 3,000 collectors tokens, about half. 1,500 credits, so about
Splitting a card roughly
4 times less. 1 mystery variant, that was the same. 1 premium mystery variant instead of 6. The borders are the same, and 3 times 155 boosters instead of 5, and no gold.
So these people were unaffected, right?
We got robbed.
No conquest medals and
How could
conquest
you forget?
tickets.
And no season pass XP, but yeah, those things are not.
The big one here is the tokens and the gold.
Yeah, it's just the
but
tokens and gold. Yeah, for sure.
yeah,
yeah, it's still a bunch of stuff. The fact that the key amount is the same is pretty big. Keys are expensive. Yeah, this is good. I mean, I think this is how things probably should have went. I wouldn't have been someone to be like annoyed if it was blanketed compensation. But I think it makes sense that they wanted to compensate the effect. They wanted to because a certain part of the player base literally got locked out. Some of them are still locked out.
Well,
It's not surprising they wanted to.
I mean, I wasn't impacted at all, and so I mean, it's like great, I'll take it. Whereas I it's tough. Like after how do you handle this? I think this was a good way of handling it. It's like they took the compensation and gave that to everyone, and then like doubled it or more than doubled it for those
Yeah,
impacted.
that's basically what they did, and I think
Yeah.
that's
Well, see
good.
what they're calling it, global gratitude package.
Yeah, they're
So
also using this. I think they also bumped it a bit because they're trying to use this as a chance to like say, "Hey, have you missed playing Marvel Snap? Here's an excuse to come back,"
But
which is good.
this
It's
isn't enough to
capitalizing on
get
the publicity.
yeah, this isn't enough to get someone back into Snap who's lapsed, but I mean
I
it's
mean, if you're a
not much.
casual player, I think this will bring someone back to log in and grab a card or spend the keys or something. Will that person stay back longer than a week? Who knows? But I would bet just being, buzzing in the news, and also if you hear they're giving a bunch of stuff out, I'm almost certain some people are gonna hop back in. But I agree. I don't think this is gonna be the thing that brings people back in droves. It's just like a nice little bonus thing.
yeah,
Yeah, it's a lot. No, and it got me like I said before, got me climbing ladder. We're going to talk about that experience cuz good grief. Yeah, that was something.
yeah. You've
And
not had a great time, huh?
well, I mean,
It's
it's not that
so
I didn't have a great time. It's that the way that it was, the way that the flow chart that I would follow pre-infinite to basically make my climb a non-climb. Whether you want to call that optimization or exploit, it's up to you. But that no longer was available to me, and I actually had to like play skill testing games of Marvel Snap to climb
I'll,
rather than like doing it half asleep.
so you and I did like the switcheroo this month because I hit infinite on like day 3, and I
Mhm.
just like I sailed through and I was like, oh wow, this is great. I mean, I played a lot, but it was fast relatively, and I normally wait until like the end of the month, and
Mhm.
I never like I don't get bots. I just get low CL players, and it's miserable because you can't predict stuff. People play super weird, like, and you gotta actually like play hard. I mean, and I had some games like that, but it felt like a breeze this month. I don't know.
Yeah, so I suspect this is all speculation, but I suspect that when the patch was released this month, um, something changed with ladder. I think that two things changed. And again, this is speculative. I have no proof other than my experience and the feedback of people that are kind of at my skill level, more or less, stat points. No bots or very few bots. Instead of queuing into bots, sometimes you would queue into very low collection level players, like someone between collection level 1 and 3,000. And when you did queue into a bot, it was very reminiscent of the bots that used to exist post Infinite before they had the snap points system in place. So it used to be that when you'd hit 100, you'd hit infinite, but it kept going. Like you could get rank 101, 103, 200, and there was no ceiling, right? You just kept
Mhm.
climbing, and then once you climbed past a certain point, you'd start queuing into these bots, and they'd have ESP. They would take you down,
Cheater bots.
cheater bots, and
Yeah, they
so
know
I
like the outcome of RNG rolls, and
yeah, I
it's
was queuing
annoying.
into I lost 8 cubes to bots this month. Like it
Oh, that
happens once
hurts.
in a while.
That sucks though. Yeah.
Yeah, the bots they change, their decks change, their names change, their play patterns changed, and they ceased becoming like I would farm bots, and they were no longer farmable for me. So it's going to be interesting to see if next month you have that experience, Nate. I suspect you will if they don't change it back. But I'm curious for zombies, right? People who are kind of not at the middle of the ladder, but the top of the ladder.
Hmm.
Are you still going to have the bot experience, or are you actually going
It
to?
was unchanged for me this month. I
But
don't
you hit
know
it
if
before the
Yeah,
patch,
I hit
right?
it early,
Yeah.
but I have heard a lot of people talking about this. Like, I've noticed a surprising uptick in the amount of people who normally get infinite super fast who have felt like they've had a tougher time this month and feel like they're also seeing less bots. and I mean, I'm higher up on the ladder. Like, I'm usually finishing top 50 or top 100 or whatever. So it's uh, I don't expect my experience to change very much because they feed us bots to keep us away from the general population. But it does feel like in watching Blue play and helping him with like co-op and just hearing from other people, it does feel like something happened. Because I I don't think you'd see just such a large uptick in people like talking about this. It's
I
just
did.
unusual.
I played last night or this morning, very early in the morning, and I did encounter more bots. Like I hit 3 bots and then I got to infinite. Like I was like dangling around 97, 98 for like a couple of hours, and then I've been playing for 3.5 hours with zombies, and I was like, whatever, I'll get it. The only reason why I wanted to hit infinite was because I was curious what my snap points would be coming in, because I wanted to see if
Mhm.
that was going to change. And I played a little more snap a few hours later, and it was like bot, bot, bot. Like, mind you, I took those bots very seriously, but I would beat them each for 2 cubes, and I beat one for 4, and that was enough to get me there. There was no like
Nice.
8-cuber, like, like dunkers. These were like, I was scared of these. I respected these bots. I had bot
Yeah,
respect.
and some of them have, like, updated decks now, like,
Yeah,
the bots used to not have Series 5 cards, now they do have some. They're not, like, super, super up-to-date lists, like, but, there are some newer ones in the rotation, and I was genuinely surprised seeing some of the bot games you experienced, like, it did feel like
not
they
your
were
papa's
playing
bots.
better,
Yeah,
yeah, than they used to. It felt like they were, because bots used to be playing such obviously worse decks and make such obviously bad plays, and I think they still do sometimes, but I think like the amount that happens has gone down, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did like open up the range of like matchmaking a bit, and that's why people are getting less bots to begin with. Is maybe it's just a bit more open matchmaking where you're there. I mean, we don't know how their matchmaking works, but we know before Infinite, at least in some way, they factor in collection level as part of that, as a way to help insulate newer players. And then all that goes out the window when you hit Infinite. That's why you sometimes see low CL players very high up on the ladder because they beat a bunch of bots because they aren't running into their skill levels too high for their bracket, and then they get into Infinite and they're thrown to the wolves and they just get. Well, it's not great. I hope they actually change that because it shouldn't be like that.
yeah, I mean, the
um,
low CL players that I was playing, like they were very skittish. They would always like retreat for 1 cube, and like oftentimes like it would be like turn 2, pop gone, and I'd be like, huh? Like the game, I even like didn't flop all the locations. Like why leave? But they're just like, nope. Like they see the
Mm.
splits on your cards, or they see you see your infinite avatar, or they look at your profile and they're like,
I'm out.
so like, instead of getting an 8-cuber, you'd get a 1-cuber, and so it felt like the amount of cubes being fed, it felt a lot like January 2023 Zabu season, where everyone was like trading like 1 or 2 cubes. Um, but I'll tell you what, like people that I was queuing into, they snapped well. Like they're tough opponents. It was tough. Like I like at one point I was saying like if I didn't if I wasn't so curious to see what my snap points were gonna be, I probably would just feel like screw this. It's not worth like killing myself over. And then, like, to add insult to injury, the fact that I'm missing a lot of cards now since my break kind of is frustrating also, because like I feel like whenever I get queued into a mirror, it's like I'm playing the mirror, but they've got slightly better cards, like they've got a higher caliber than I do.
mhm.
Um, and so I entered in quite high for me, everything being relative, 75, 22. Usually I would enter in closer to around 7,000. And I climbed last season. I think I finished at like 78 or 79. I was trying to hit 8,000. I didn't quite make it. It
That
wasn't
could
quite.
be that probably has more to do with it. I know your current climb factors in,
Well,
but
but wouldn't my experience be like, um, easier if I ended higher up? Like, wouldn't there be like less people like in the ladder and more infinite? So wouldn't I seem like usually like
I
the
don't
later
think
when I
so at
later I'd
that
climb, the more bots
point
I'd see.
level.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
Because I think there are a good amount of people who are in that skill level.
Hmm.
I think between that like 75 to 8K range is a pretty large number of folks.
It's like the above average to
It's
above
like,
average.
yeah, like I mean, you can see here with you at 7,500, you're at 5,300 rank, and the cutoff when they start showing your rank when you enter a game is 5,000. So you're like right on
According
that.
to Untapped, right now there are 44,000 people in Infinite. According to
Okay.
Untapped.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I know the bottom of Infinite at I think one of the game's biggest points that we have tracked was almost like 200,000. But that was like a year ago, maybe or
Mm.
so. It was a while ago. Um, I imagine, and obviously Untapped doesn't, track everyone. But I do think it tracks a decent portion of the
Gives
player
you
base.
an idea.
Like, I would imagine at the end of the season, there'll be, like, somewhere between 80 and 100K, like, maybe slightly less, maybe closer to 80, maybe a little under 80. That's the estimate I would give, which is still a lot less than it used to be. One thing is, like, on the higher up end, myself, many other people have noticed, it's so easy to maintain a high rank now if you can get the points, like, it's people just aren't competing for it. You have Sizer, who's like so ahead of everyone else because he's a very good player and he plays a lot. Yeah, someone someone made this like open sourced. It's basically it takes the information from the game instead of the Infinite website leaderboard on Snap has always been kind of inaccurate, and so someone made one. And it's really cool because not only does it tell you which player is what rank and how many snap points they have, but if that player has a YouTube or a Twitch or an Untapped account, you can click it. So it's cool. Like if you ever want my decks, you can go look at this leaderboard and you scroll down to my name at 33 on the ranking, and you can just click my Untapped and go look at my decks. So that's kind of cool.
Oh, that's neat.
I'll
Yeah.
link it if you guys want to check it out. But it's neat. So you can see like I mean, Sizer's number one at like 10,400. Second place is like 9,900. The third place is a person the weird section of the Italian community of Snap is boosting up again because the second hitter doesn't seem to care about that. But it's so funny that even with them like trying to cheat and boost, they still don't have the number one or the number two slot, and they're beat out by number one by a lot. And then the gap falls pretty quickly from there. It goes from like 9,800 to 96. And then from 96 to 94, let's see, where's the cutoff for 9,000? There are 22 people with 9,000 or more snap points right now. That is all the people with that many snap points. For reference, I'm sitting at 8855, and that's rank 33. And I'm not really I'm not someone who goes out of my way to try and like climb. I like to maintain like a generally high rank, but I play weird stuff and I do not I don't make it my goal to chase the number because I think that just makes the game less fun for me and makes for less fun streams. But one thing I've noticed, and it's not just true in like the top 50 or top 100. I mean, I know people in like the top 1,000 or top 5,000 who feel like they've noticed a similar thing where it feels easier and easier to maintain these higher ranks because some people who used to play quit. It just there are a lot of factors. But if you've ever wanted to chase a high rank in Marvel Snap, it's not a bad time to do it. It's easier than it's ever been.
Yeah.
I feel like post Infinite, my games have been easier than pre. People were, man, it was sweaty, and
Yeah, I believe that. Mhm.
people were like playing for keeps. Like
'Cause there's stuff on
I,
the line. Post Infinite, a lot of people just play for fun. Like, there's a small
yeah,
section that like to grind, but, that's very much, I think, a minority in the Snap community. I think a lot of people the real reward for Infinite is not the card back. it's getting to play whatever you want and be able to stay in turn 6, even if you lose, you don't care. You got to see a fun game outcome. Whereas when you're
Right.
climbing, if you stay on a thing you know you're going to lose, you have to earn those cubes back. You're gonna have to get that back up because that's just how it works. Whereas post infinite, most people don't care about the number.
Man, so like I had a real hard time choosing what to play, and I ended up settling on Surfer because at first, like when I was like looking at what to play, I auto built Sarah. I put Sarah in the deck editor and hit auto build, and it was a Surfer deck. And then
Oh,
I went
really?
to untap, and I'm like, is Surfer really the best way to play Sarah? And sadly, the answer is yes right now, at least from an untapped perspective. That there's obviously
Yeah,
slant.
that lines up with my experience. Sarah's seen better days. Like she's
Yeah.
not the premier control deck she used to be. It's
And
harder to get away with her.
a lot of Surfer decks don't even run Sarah. I'm not even sure it's
Yeah,
optimal, but I'm missing so many cards just for this deck alone, right? I don't have Rocket Raccoon and Groot. I don't have Copycat. Those are the two big ones. I don't have Makiri. That's not a huge deal, but for a minute it was included in the decks because it's just
I think
solid
it's
three
still
drop.
the highest. It might have changed, but nobody likes playing the Makari version of Surfer except for like one or two people. But it consistently has insane stats. Like Makari, I'm like very confident is actually a hugely slept on card in Silver Surfer.
Yeah.
But people don't like the randomness of it, and a lot of people like you don't own it. That was a card a lot of people skipped.
I'm gonna check to
Yeah, I
see
don't know if it's changed or
Makari.
not, but consistently, Makari
Oh
Surfer
yeah.
has done very, very well.
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
looking at top 10% infinite decks that include Makari, and basically there's a couple people playing Surfer with it. There's some weird decks here, but the one that looks the most straight ahead is basically what I was playing, except it's running no Sarah. It's not running Hope either. It's running
oh,
Rogue,
really
Red Guardian, Rocket Raccoon and Groot, Makari.
interesting.
This one here is running Makari and Hope. I like this build a little bit better. But anyways, yeah, they're the best win rate Surfer decks have Makari in it. But like the sample's really small.
Yeah, that's part of the reason. Although, yeah, it's the card does pretty well in Surfer. Not a must-have by any means, but one that is, I think, consistently forgotten about relative to its strength. But Rocket and Groot is definitely the bigger one. Like that card is basically the new Nocturne. Like Nocturne was the first of the 3/5s that went in like a million different decks. And Rocket and Groot is the modern version of that. It moves. You don't have the location control element, but the ability on the card is very strong in the fact that it synergizes with the movement where you can catch your opponent off guard and move it, and suddenly you're sapping their stuff and growing your card is really
Okay,
powerful.
so I'm gonna ask you a question that you probably get asked all the time.
If it's about
Um,
substitutes, yeah, I'm pretty good at
no, 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 no. It's not
answering.
about substitutes. Although, in
Or like
fairness,
card quality, like what card to get.
before I was running Mobius on
Hmm.
the deck that's on screen here, I was running Gladiator, and I made that change because your recommendation, and that was a good meta call that really served me well. No, my question is, I'm going to be able to get a new card with the
Hmm.
loot that we're getting next week for the compensation, and I presently have Rocket Raccoon and Groot pinned. But here's some other cards that I don't own.
Hmm.
Frigga, Gore, Makari, Wiccan. Those are probably there are more, but I'm gonna stop there. Those are probably like the best cards that I don't own that would be in
Hmm.
contention. Do you think that I should not get Rocket Raccoon and Groot, knowing that I'm partially doing so specifically because I was annoyed that I didn't have it in this deck and I played a lot of games of it? But do you think that I should would you encourage me to go for one of those other cards instead?
I think out of that list, there are three cards that stand out as ones that are very much worth picking up in no particular order. Uh, it is Gore, Rocket and Groot, and Wiccan. Uh, w- I'm a big recommender of getting cards that give you a new archetype and Wiccan is really the only the only card in that list that does that. Wiccan's a deck. It's and even if you're missing a lot of the newer cards, you can build Wiccan in so many ways that most people can find a way to make that card
So you
succeed,
would
even
you
if
would
you're missing a lot of
recommend
cards.
getting Rocket Raccoon over Frigga?
Yeah, I would. But the main reason for that is because I think one of the things I value in using a card, and I think you probably also value, is how much the whole reason you want a card is to play it, right? Like you don't want to buy a card and use it one time in one deck, and then you don't want Kang syndrome,
Yeah, I was just
right?
thinking about Kang. I was gonna say you don't want to Kang it.
You don't want a Kang, right? Where
Yeah,
you play it once and you're like, "All right, well, that was fun," and then you don't ever play that deck again. That's what I think a lot of people want to avoid because it feels like you
yeah,
wasted your resources.
yeah.
And
Especially when those resources are scarce.
yeah. And so Rocket Raccoon, I think, is the opposite of that card. Rocket Raccoon and Rocket and Groot, they go in. I put that card in so many decks. I think the one
It's
thing it
just
had
good,
going
yeah.
against it was the fact that before last OTA, like Luke Cage was in like half the decks in the game. So that was like the one thing working against it. And then after the nerfs, Luke Cage is significantly less played, even though he's still good. He's way, way, way less prominent in the metagame. And that gave this card a huge, huge boost. And it just goes in so many good decks. Like it's good in the Ajax Affliction deck. It's good in Silver Surfer. It's good. I just jam that card in so many decks because it's a fun. It's good in Scream. I've been playing it in Scream.
Yeah,
It's just a very flexible card, and it does the thing Nocturne did in the past of like it's just a 3-drop that is generically powerful, and it doesn't demand you build your deck in a certain way, so you can just put it in whatever deck, whatever kind of mid-range pile benefits from that.
Mhm.
It's basically the new Copycat. I think that's what Copycat was doing for a while, and she still does
yeah,
it to an extent. Copycat's still very strong, but I do feel like that move flexibility is so good, and there are only so many cards that do that. And Rocket and Groot is it's like it's the new Jeff of 3-drops in a lot of ways, except
yeah,
there's a little bit more competition in that 3-drop slot than like Jeff had when he was in his prime. Like because you do have Gladiator and Copycat and there are others, but the speed there are a lot of premium 3-drops in the game
Red
now.
Guardian. Yeah,
Yeah, Red Guardian. There are a lot of really good ones, and Mobius. Like if you haven't already heard, I mean, I'm sure the metagame will change in like a week. Play Mobius in your decks. Mobius answers so many of the powerful decks out there right now. It dunks negative. It stops the swarms and bullseye. It stops so very much stuff that is going on right now. And
discounted deaths. Like even like the
yeah, cheaper
fringe
deaths.
things like that happen. Yeah.
You get
No.
location benefits too if it's like a reduction location or one of those ones that makes your cards more. And Mobius is just really, really good, and not enough people are playing Mobius, and I get it. It's because he's not the most exciting card in the world. It's kind of like Iceman. You don't really see the true impact a lot of the time of what the
Mm,
card ends up doing. So I think a lot of people discount it. But especially if you are really tired of getting Modoc into Bullseye and them having 80 swarms, Mobius will go a long way to stopping that problem.
Yeah.
Or if you're
negative is
tired
the
of getting
best.
negative,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's the best performing deck at all brackets of ladder from top 10% to your climb to infinite. You're going to be seeing not a huge amount of negative, but a significant portion negative. And Mobius is oftentimes like, oh, I can compete with this deck versus I have to get out.
Yeah, if like the
So,
negative player gets their really good draw, you usually can't beat them with most decks, and Mobius gives you a chance at beating their good draw. And the big thing I've learned this season is tech is really powerful right now, but not every deck is weak to tech. So you can't do what you used to do, which is jam like 4 or 5 tech cards in a Sarah control shell and find a lot of success with it. I saw a few people who did okay with that kind of stuff, but I think the problem with all-in tech decks is when you run into stuff where your tech doesn't line up or you don't draw your tech when you need it, your deck doesn't put out nearly enough points to compete with the average deck. It's just not enough. So what you've been seeing instead is tech decks are going in two main directions. They're either Wiccan, which essentially it's kind of like what Sarah was doing. You're just playing better quality cards because if you get Wiccan, you're getting that extra energy, which lets you play multiple cards, which is what the point of Sarah was, right? It was so you could Shang and Killmonger and Nova in the same turn or whatever combination of cards. And Wiccan just lets you do that in a similar means. You're just playing more high quality cards and stats. And the other one are these like mill decks that like Fudge kind of pioneered. He's a top infinite player. He pioneered the refining the mill archetype a bit. And the reason the mill decks are good is not because they are milling you, it's because they're playing powerful tech cards that can decide the game, but they also have enough points to where if the tech cards aren't relevant, they can still put out, a pretty big death. They can still put out a bunch of demons. They just put out numbers, even if they aren't tech carding you, which is why they're strong. So that's definitely something to think about going into the new month. I'm sure it'll change a little bit. We got another OTA coming up this week. We'll see what happens, but I think tech is really really strong right now, but only if you build it in a way where your deck also has points if the tech isn't, the thing winning you the game.
That's why I ended up playing Surfer instead of Sarah Control, because
Because
like,
it's points. You're putting out good, solid points with the
yeah,
Brood Ab stuff. Like Surfer puts out a very reasonable amount of points. I think it gets a little neglected as an archetype because it didn't get a bunch of crazy tools this month. Like most of the stuff this month is not relevant for Surfer. Last month was more of a Surfer month because we got Galacta and Rocket and Group, but this month not too much for the Surfer people. But yeah, I think you put out good points and then you adapted it a little bit and you put in some tech that is very powerful. You put in the Mobius, you already had Red Guardian. Like this is also kind of Killmonger. Killmonger's a
Killmonger.
very strong
Yeah,
tech right now because of all the demons and stuff. Even against like the Wiccan Victoria Hand stuff too. They have a lot of one drops. Yeah, it's just that's something I think a lot more players should be thinking about because that's been kind of the direction things have been shifting, and I'm very curious to see what ends up happening in the upcoming OTA this week because I think for the most part, they've been on a bit of a heater with the OTAs. The OTAs, if you guys remember,
yeah.
before the holidays, we had a streak of like two or three or maybe more. I don't remember how many it was, but they had some pretty poorly received ones, and then I think they did a pretty good job with the larger OTAs where they were only doing one a month because the holidays. Um, but now we're back to that two a month cycle. And generally speaking, I think they've been doing good stuff with the OTAs. I was a little sad to see they changed Scream, but the buff to Spider-Man has really helped offset that quite a bit. They nerfed Luke Cage, which I think needed to happen, and I won't be surprised if that card gets revisited again and changed in a different way in the future. But that they hit it with a small band-aid fix, and it did a good job of making it so not every deck in the game is a Luke Cage deck. They buffed Kazar back to his beta status. Poor Hydration Robber got nerfed. They
Yeah,
brought up a bunch
Hydra
of
Bob was the one that I think if
Yeah.
anyone was upset, it would be this one because like it was building for months. It's like, oh, should I pull the trigger on Hydra Bob? And like you called it. You're like, the only reason it hasn't been nerfed is because it hasn't hit critical mass. Well,
they
critical
hit
mass
critical
came at
mass.
the
Yeah.
last OTA, and
And
there
it's
you
still
go.
a great card. But Hydra Bob is still better than most of the one drops in the game. It's still very, very good. It's
A
less played than
1/4
it
with
was.
like no downside. Yeah.
It's good. It's very good. They buffed Sentry, which was nice to see. They buffed Onslaught, which I thought was sick. Mr. Fantastic. The Hela rework was interesting. Like it made the deck building with Hela a lot more interesting than it was before. Like they cooked with they've been on a bit of a roll with I think just like pretty good OTAs. So I hope they can keep it up because like yeah, it's a very welcome
If
change
I
from where they were a few months ago.
If I had to guess what's going to be hit, we talked about this before we pressed record, so apologies. This is a bit of a repeat for you guys. Um, Generally, play rate is the biggest indicator of what's going to be nerfed, and the card that seems to have the highest play rate right now is Wiccan. I wouldn't be surprised if Wiccan gets adjusted a little bit, maybe to a 4/6 again, or
Yeah,
maybe
I
even a
expect
4/5.
lighter changes overall, because and it's funny, and we've talked about this a bit, but the we've done this podcast for a while now, and complaints
We've
about the
been here for a minute.
acquisition, they've always been a thing, right? Like since very near to the beginning. But one thing that has changed quite a bit is a lot of our complaints used to be more directed towards the balance of the game, in part because the acquisition system and the balance system didn't mesh super well. And I mean, in a lot of ways, they still don't mesh super well. But the good news is that in the last year or so, they've gotten significantly better at balancing the game.
Right.
I think it's like notably better. Because what would happen for so much of 2023, and even like the little first bit of 2024, a new S tier deck would rise up. It would dominate the game for 2 weeks to a month. It would be a tier above everything else, and it would get really old really quickly. And at least in the last 6 to 8 months or so, it's been pretty rare for that to happen. And the times it did happen, it wasn't as outlandish and it got addressed faster. I'm thinking like namely like Surtur, to a lesser extent Agent Venom. Those were like, yeah, they were above everything else, but it wasn't as wide of a margin, and it was also adjusted faster. Um, so I mean, I think that's a really good thing, is the fact that they finally have found a bit of a better line to. They're still pushing really powerful cards that impact the game, but it doesn't feel like they're breaking the game in the process, or they're releasing like these overly pushed versions just so they can sell them and then nerf them in 2 weeks to a month.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm glad. That's got pretty annoying.
It was very annoying because it worked very poorly with the acquisition system. Or like one of the cards that got nerfed, US Agent. They undid the US Agent buff. So it's now back to giving -3 instead of -4. That was a big change. The card's still good, but yeah, remember how many people skipped on Agent and then they buffed him the next week and people were really unhappy about it? It happened with Bob too.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm happy the game has been in a place where the deck variety has been good, and it really feels like we haven't been subjected to a meta where there's like this S tier tyrant defining the game for quite a little while, and it's great. It's so much more refreshing. I've had such a better time playing the game
Since
because it
they've
doesn't feel like you're pushed into one whatever thing they decide is the broken thing of the month, and they're still making really strong, arguably broken cards. Like I think both Galacta
Bullseye and
and Iron Patriot were
oh,
pushed a little harder than they needed to be. Like I think you could have taken a point off Galacta. I think you could have taken a point or one cost reduction off Iron Patriot, and those cards still would have found a lot of success.
right.
But they're not breaking the game in the current form they're in. They're very strong, but they aren't like, if you don't own those cards, there are still things you can play and compete with those cards at a reasonable level.
Yeah, it feels tough though. I'll be honest. Missing cards hurts. It's not
Yeah.
impossible, but it does feel like you have a little bit less kick in your game plan. Yeah, it does feel like since RSM got changed to not ramp you for the first 2 turns, things seems to have been pretty good.
That was a great
Um,
change. That was that, and the fact that this change goes under the radar because it's only a change. It's a change you don't remember because it doesn't affect us anymore. The fact that they can't generate a copy of a card in their deck was one of the best changes they ever made to that card.
oh
Like
yeah,
the
double
salt of
double
losing to a
Shang,
generated double Shang or double
double
Eliath
Shadow
or a
King.
Shadow King.
Yeah,
It was just, that sucked. That sucked
yeah,
so much. It was one of the worst parts about the card. And so the fact that they lumped that in with the nerf was genuinely one of the best decisions they have ever made in terms of
literally
nerfing the card.
unplayable now.
It,
Literally
it's but yeah, they've gotten a lot better at the balance, and it sucks that I feel like it's been kind of acknowledged a bit, but I feel like many people have a harder time truly appreciating that because, like you said, they don't have all the cards, so they're you just aren't experiencing as much of it when you don't have all the cards or most of the cards. Like you don't get to reap the benefits of that as much as say like I can by having almost all the cards, because I have more options. I have more. The more cards you have in an open metagame, like it feels better because like you can explore that openness more. Whereas if you're missing, if you're missing Malekith, all of a sudden you can't really brew decks in that specific style, and it's so that's one of the many reasons they really need to make the card acquisition better, because I think it'll make a lot more people appreciate that the game balance is a lot better than it used to be. It's significantly better than it used to be. Like when I think back to 2023 Snap, I don't think I could go back to the game being like that. Like, and like still stream as much as I want to stream and enjoy the game. Like, because if you didn't like the thing that was busted, it was such an annoying 2 to 4 weeks of playing Snap. If you didn't like whatever thing happened to be the busted thing. Remember when we were dealing with, the 18 different iterations of Thanos being S tier?
Yeah, like we were really worried about Doom 2099 when it came out, and it's still really good, and that's what you played, Nate, earlier this month.
Yeah, like that card's great, but it's
But
already
it didn't, yeah,
it's
it
already
didn't,
went from like being a defining part of the metagame to like almost falling by the wayside a bit. Even though it's still
yeah.
good and viable, it's not as popular as it was.
Yeah.
That's for sure. But it's still a good deck, and it's a good example of like, hey, this is
It
this is a
was one of
thing
the
to
decks
do.
I was least excited to see on ladder.
Oh, really?
But
Yeah,
oh
I guess
well,
because
There's a
it
lot
doesn't
of different
Sucker doesn't
versions
line
of
up
it
into
too.
it
I
super
mean,
well. Yeah, although they've gone down, the number of Doom decks has decreased.
it has. Yeah.
Like, and the variety of them has decreased too. Now most of them are either playing this list you played
mhm.
with or without the Super Scroll, that changes, or they're playing it in Arsham. Arsham has kind of adopted the Dooms as its more consistent power output, since you can get Doom 2099 on turn 3. And it also likes running Legion, so
It's
Arsham
good
has
in
been another
Arsham.
adapter of
You can
Doom.
you can stuff in the Mobius and the other cards that you wouldn't be able to normally fit in Doom into
Yeah.
Arsham. But yeah, no, this was really a common sighting on ladder, and this deck puts up numbers, and it does so while being competitive in all three lanes. I feel like most decks right now have to be able to compete for all three lanes. If you don't, it's not to say that you can't find success, but it's going to be harder because it's a lot easier for a 3-lane deck to abandon a lane, whereas a deck that kind of goes all in on a single lane.
Sometimes they'll go taller than you or have interaction, and then it's over. Like,
Yeah, I
that is
find that.
definitely one of the benefits of Doom, is the fact that
Yeah,
it does fight for all 3 lanes. And it's always interesting to see how quickly the Snap meta shifts and changes, because I mean, at the end of last season, I mean, Doom was the star card of the season for that month. It was the one everyone said to wait and get, and it did have a massive part of the metagame. And just a few weeks later, not a ton has changed. I mean, we got some new cards for sure, right? And we got some OTA stuff, but it's crazy how quickly a card goes from being like such a defining part of the metagame to being a bit more fringe and less common.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, I really liked playing Doom in the hybrid Scream Doom deck, but I tried to play that like 2 weeks ago and it felt terrible. Like, it just didn't, especially after the Scream nerf, it just didn't stack up anymore, and I had to reevaluate how to build that deck. And for Doom, like, I think the way Nate had it here, or in the Arsham versions, or I also have another idea I wanted to try with it, but it's changed. It's definitely changed, and I think we're gonna see something similar happen, maybe with like discard, like, because discard's been everywhere this week. Because Bullseye, I think a lot of people underrated Bullseye.
Bullseye, like I thought Bullseye was going to be good, and then I ended up getting it because I gambit the keys, and then I played Bullseye for the first time today because I wanted to do the weekly, and I'm missing Frigga, which is an important piece of that deck. But oh my goodness, it felt so strong, like more
It's
than
very
I
strong.
thought it would.
And it's not
Um,
even the funny thing about Bullseye is, I think people got caught up in the value he's giving from the effect of giving -2. That's the weaker part of the card.
Yeah, that's what surprised me the most. The scalars for discard. You have 3 scalars in that deck, and they're all super copyable by Frigga.
They
So you've
get
got
really big, really
Collector,
fast.
Morbius, not Mobius, and frickin' Meek. That
Meek's
like
back.
Meek is like putting numbers up like Human Torch numbers, like it's nuts. And like so if you like this happened to me when I was playing against the deck. It was like they'd play Morbius, and I'd be like, oh, okay, well, I can compete for the other 2 lanes. I'm cool. And then they play Frigga and get another Morbius, excuse me, and I'm just sitting there and I'm like,
Oh
oh.
no, I don't have a tech. This is gonna be a 10 or 20 power 2-drop. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's like
The
get out
amount of
it's like
cards it
Red
discards
Guardian or
is
leave.
hard to
Yeah,
top.
so it's really good. Yeah, It'll be interesting to see. It doesn't have a good win rate though. But
Really.
yeah, like if you look at let me look at
I guess it's
deck.
because
So
the meta's
Bullseye,
adapting a bit to counter it. The real question of a new card is the week after it came out, what it's looking like. Because during the first week, people play bad lists, people
yeah,
play
I
them
think
optimally. Then also people try and break out the counters because they get sick of facing it.
the
It's
good
Snap
list
is always weird with
the good list is
early
looking really
impressions.
good. So the card's good. It just got dragged down. It's
Yeah,
looking
that's normal.
really.
That's pretty normal.
The one with Moon Girl, the one that KM Best tweeted today on KM Best's excellent weekly deck anthology tweets, KM's best decks of the week. Yeah, he posted a list with the Moon
Oh, Moon
Girl,
Girl,
which
I
just
hadn't
makes
seen
a
that.
lot of sense, and that
What did they cut for it? What got cut
that
for Moon
slaps.
Girl?
I don't have Frigga. I put an X23, and that goes really well with Moon Girl. It juices the collector really well, and it also juices Morbius because when you discard with Bullseye, it all procs like the discard, like it all counts for Morbius, and collector gets juiced when the swarms and scorns come back to your
Mhm.
hand. Yeah, I don't know what they do. It probably is a change to Bullseye, but like
Well,
it's
we know that's not how we do things here. We nerf old cards that we didn't
Frigga.
put in the boxes.
Well,
But I don't know. I don't know
Moon
if they're
Girl
gonna
would
rush
be
to make
the,
a
the
discard, but we'll see.
yeah, maybe,
It
yeah, who
might. It's putting
knows?
out a lot of points, but the age old question remains of like, what does this deck look like it's doing a week after release? That's always the true test because it won't have everyone will be trying out the other new card, which well maybe not everyone because Ares is probably the I think least exciting slash impactful card of the month. But people will not usually people transition off of the new card once it's been out for a week. They go back to what they like to play or they try other stuff. So, but the Bullseye stuff is very strong, and I am almost positive it's going to stick around. It's just a question of like, how does it look into a metagame that has less Bullseye mirrors? Is I think the big question.
Yeah, it's a tough one. There's a lot of Series 5 cards in that deck, and when you're missing a key piece, it still can be playable, but it is tougher. Um, so yeah, it's a tough one. It's a lot of if they could fix that fast forward thing, the deck would be a lot of fun to play. I find it really jarring to play because of that. It takes me a second to like assess what happened, but it's definitely powerful. I think that Doom is also here to stay. It's just a lot of points.
It
And
is. I'm not gonna wish this into existence, but Doom strikes me exactly as the kind of card they're gonna nerf. Purely
Shh,
because
bad. Don't say that.
it's like Surtur. It's like Doom is an archetype that like is so easy for everybody to play, and I feel like those are the ones that end up getting hit at some point. Well,
yeah,
meanwhile, like move bounce gets ignored because like it's only high infinite that is spamming it or whatever. But it's like Surtur, where everyone was so surprised that they nerfed Typhoid Mary and Surtur because they were like, yeah, Surtur's still the best deck in the game. And I had a bunch of people who were like, wait, I'm confused. Like you and a bunch of the other like high infinite people I follow, they don't think Surtur's the best deck in the game. We're like, well, it's not. But the thing is, if you look across the larger player base, it's really easy to play Surtur. It's hard to mess up. And it puts out a lot of points, which that's how you win games in Marvel Snap. Sometimes I feel like people forget, with all the combos and neat stuff you can do, it's a game about points. It's a game about putting numbers on a board, and it does that very effectively. And Doom is the same thing. Doom does it very effectively. It's very easy to play. I do think one thing that it has going for it that Surtur did not, which might save it from the nerf bat, is sometimes you get bad RNG with the bots, and they don't go where you
Yep.
want them to. And I think that's the one thing that is helping keep this deck, because I don't think this deck's overpowered. It's not even like one of the top decks in the game right now or anything. It's good, it's playable, but I think the thing that's probably keeping it from being like Surtur levels of like more represented and more quote unquote oppressive across the larger player base is that randomness with the Doombot will sometimes just not go
We
your
saw
way.
that last night. There were a few games I had no business winning that I did because the
Yeah,
bot
the
just
bot filled the lane, and suddenly their Doctor Doom loses power, and it prevents them getting more power in the other lanes. And like, yeah, that just happens sometimes.
Yeah.
So that's because I don't want them to nerf Doom. I like Doom, but it is worth noting. Much like play rate is often an indicator of when something's going to get nerfed, I also think ease of use can be too, because they don't balance the
Interesting.
game around the
Doom
top of the player base. They balance it around the larger player base.
Doom, so if I look at pre-infinite numbers, if I look at 90 to 99, here are the top 4 decks, and they're pretty even across the board. There's Negative,
Mm-hmm.
Agent Venom, which is like the Cassandra Nova Sage
Yeah, the
Cosmo deck
small decks.
with
Mhm.
Bast, Surfer, and Wiccan. The thing that I find interesting about this is that yeah, and then right underneath that is RSM, which has a really high win rate as well, with a middling play rate. Doom, on the other hand, actually Doom is interesting. So it's more than double the play rate. It's 7.8%,
Really?
and it has a pretty respectable win rate at 53.4%. That's 90 to 99. If I look at Infinite, like the bottom 50% of Infinite, and I just want to see the play rate, 3.7. It seems a lot more popular pre-Infinite. It almost halves post-Infinite, and its win rate drops.
Yeah, I'd believe that. I also think, much like
And
Surtur, it's a deck that isn't as exciting for higher infinite or even infinite compared to non-infinite players, because it does a neat thing, but it becomes very repetitive very quickly.
It does,
Like,
yeah.
um,
That's why I like this version, because it gets to play with the locations.
yeah.
I cannot tell you how many times I nuked somebody with Storm, War Machine, Legion, or some
Mhm.
variation thereof, or even Legion just does crazy things. You shut
Yeah,
off.
Legion steals games. He's
You,
a cube thief, right?
yeah,
yeah,
you shut off Magic's location, whatever it's called.
Mhm. Limbo, yeah.
Limbo. There's a bunch of times where I've gotten the what is it, no name bar, where you like lowest
Yep.
points win. I just do nothing and then slam it on the last turn and win. Uh, with War Machine, I've done like that location says you can't play cards here past turn 4.
Mhm.
And so you play, War Machine on 4, Legion on 5. They can't play anything on 6. Like
Yep.
and then you just laugh like. And Doctor
Yeah,
Doom,
Legion's definitely the flex spot that gives you that. It gives this deck so much more flexibility.
it does the Doom bots, they're unpredictable, and the times that you screw yourself by filling lanes that you didn't want to is
Mhm.
frustrating, but it puts up pretty big numbers. I'm still working on, like, I'm kind of homebrewing a non War Machine kind of version
Mhm.
of it. I've seen a lot of different ones that people were trying, ongoing stuff, location
Yeah.
stuff. There's some things, and I don't know, but it's fun. I enjoy it, and it was a really good reason to like crack out Doctor Doom that I hadn't played in
That's the
ages,
best thing about the
right?
Doom 2099 release. It wasn't even that 2099 was a super exciting card. It was like, oh, I have a reason to play Doctor Doom again. I loved playing Doctor Doom. He was like the iconic 6-drop for such a large portion of Snap's life.
Yeah.
yeah.
And he disappeared for like quite some time
Well,
as
they nerfed him, and that nerf really sucked.
Yeah, but they brought him back, but he got power crept, and then the
Yeah.
lockdown stuff got nerfed, so that his main home was less good, and I love the whole, we made a new version of this character that brings the old one into relevancy, and that's why I'm excited for next month's pass card, which I think is the most fun and interesting card of the month, where we're finally going to get maybe a way to use the original Captain America, who has almost never been a part of Marvel Snap's metagame outside of the early series experience. I mean, there was a very brief time when Spectrum Ongoing was a deck during the Blink Leech season, where Captain America saw a little play. But that was really it in like the whole time the game has been out. Like that was his one moment. Also, by the way, one thing I'm adding to the OTA wish list, please, it's been long enough. Give Spectrum her pity point of power back. Make Spectrum
That's
a
funny.
6/7 again. She needs it.
And give
She needs it.
Nocturne, give
And
her
Nocturne,
pity
yeah.
point back.
And Nocturne. Give it back to
Yeah.
Nocturne too. We have so many good things in the 3-drop slot. I think people remember Nocturne being this ubiquitous auto include, and it's true, she was. But part of the reason for that was she was just doing stuff better than all the other 3-drops. And now the quality of 3-drops is so high, I think you could revert Nocturne tomorrow and it wouldn't be in a lot of decks still. Because they
Yeah.
have Rocket and Groot, they have Copycat, they have Speed, they have there's so many good 3-drops now. Nocturne, part of her dominance was just because she was the first one to do it really in that time frame that really brought up 3-drops.
Any predictions for this week's OTA?
Wiccan, I think Wiccan gets hit. I said it before, I'll say it again. Play rate seems pretty high across the board. The surprise choice might be something in negative taking a hit. They might be worried about negative being too good because it's really good across all. It doesn't have the highest win rate, but it's consistently like the
We need to
highest
nerf
combo
Mr.
win.
Negative as a deck.
Gore is really good.
Gore's really strong.
So you
I
could
can
like
see it, I guess, but
shave some points off of Gore, because like a lot of times what you'll see is like you can like double Iron Man used to be Negative's best play with Mystique, but now Mystiquing Gore is sometimes
yeah,
sneaky
Mystique and
good.
Gore is huge. It gave that
I
deck
don't
another premium Mystique target.
I don't actually think they're likely to do. It's just if I had to think of something else that they were gonna
Yeah,
like
just
take
looking at
down
the
a peg.
data.
Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah, I don't know what they're gonna change. My hope would be more in the buff than the nerf direction. I could see
Yeah.
Wiccan because they called it out as one of the most popular and best decks. And I mean, again, I think whatever does get nerfed, it's gonna be like small slaps on the wrist. It's gonna be taking a point off or something. Maybe they take a point off of one of the discard cards. Like I could
Maybe
see that
they
happening.
maybe they make Red Guardian a little bit weaker too. I don't want them to touch Red Guardian. Red Guardian's really strong and it's in most decks. Like it's really high
Yeah,
play
I
rate.
mean, I could see it. I don't think they'll do it, but
No.
I think we'll see more buffs, especially maybe leading into because it's happening like shortly before the new season. So maybe they'll give ongoing stuff a little bit more love for the new Captain America synergy hype stuff. Or maybe they'll do some changes towards cards that are relevant for some of the cards releasing next month. Like, but I don't know. Maybe they finally toss Werewolf by Night its last point of power back. Like it's
Oh man,
insane
I
again.
tried to make that card work. There's just like right now, like it's
I think
just
it's poorly positioned, but it's not even the worst positioned. The problem
no.
with Werewolf by Night is it is one of the very few cards and decks in Marvel Snap that has an insanely high skill cap. And this is the reason no one plays it, is because one, there are a lot of mistakes you can make, and it's not clear what the optimal play is every turn. And two, you actually get massively punished for making mistakes with that deck. Like, there are a lot of decks you can afford to make the not optimal line and still get by and get to the finish line and win the game. If you make a misplay with the werewolf deck, that can screw you up so badly.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, your win rate is if you are someone who does like perfect it and gets really good at it, which it's already hard to do that, you're not going to be rewarded with a massive increased win rate because like it's not one of the best decks right now. But who knows? Maybe Joaquin Torres will help there. We'll talk about that stuff next time. Probably talk about the new season cards.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, kind of a lot going on with the compensation, the outage, the balance changes. It's been a pretty eventful couple weeks. Was there anything else that you guys wanted to chat about before we wrap?
I don't think so. If you're wondering when this stuff's I guess we can briefly mention they did that event, the X23 and Null thing. You didn't see that. They did like an event this season, where you just had to play some of the Dark Avengers cards, and if enough people won games with those cards in their decks, we get a bunch of free stuff, and we hit all the things for the free stuff.
Oh, we did it all. What? I didn't. Did it finish?
Yeah, it was going to the 28th, so it was going for another day or two. But yeah, we hit the final reward like yesterday or something.
Oh, okay. All right.
So yeah, if you didn't see about this, there are some rewards. We'll be getting. I think they're going to ship out next week when the game returns to app stores, as will the compensation. But it's really, I think this was a really good example of how a lot of people didn't know a lot about the event. The one thing they didn't do that I think more people wanted them to do is make it easier, like track in game. They were basically just posting updates in game on social media. You couldn't track it live. But they did say the reason they did that is because they just wanted to get this event out, and doing that would have made it take longer. And I was like, if we have a choice between getting the event faster versus getting a more like robust system in game for it, I say get it faster every time. Like I'd rather, because what the best thing about this event, we can see the rewards here. It was 500 credits, premium mystery variant, 3 of these snowflake red borders. But the big ones, they're cards here. There's X23 and Null, who are both still Series 4 cards. They are cards that have shown up a million times in Spotlight caches, so the long-term players do not want to see these cards again in their boxes. So this gives an opportunity for, they're giving newer players these powerful, I mean, if you're a newer player, 500 CL, 1000 CL, even maybe like 5000 or under, if you've been struggling to get by with your Bucky Barnes Sabretooth Destroy deck, this is huge for you. Like you get 2 of the most powerful archetype piece defining cards of Destroy. That's a massive upgrade.
Yeah, I
And
didn't think about it like that.
and it's totally for free, and it makes it so you don't have to put these cards back in spotlights and annoy the people who already have like 4 spotlight variants for these cards.
Yep.
So I think this was awesome. I really hope we see them do more stuff like this, because yeah, there's you get cool variants, so there's still something there for if you are someone who owns these cards already, you're still getting something. Like I really like that Null variant. It's where he's like dunking on Venom in the ring. It's like a follow up where Venom's dunking on Spider-Man from that
Yeah,
other
it,
variant.
it plays off of that Venom wrestling.
Yeah, it's cool. I love it. Even as someone who doesn't play Null a lot, I'm pleased about this. But really, the thing that makes me happy is that this gives them a way to get these cards in the hands of the players who genuinely will benefit from them the most, without doing the annoying thing of taking up spots in the spotlight system. And even that aside, they're free. So like even if they showed up in the spotlight, people would still have to spend keys on them, right? This is just free. It's this is great. I think this is the type of thing they should do more of, specifically for some of these older Series 4 cards, or even some of the older Series 5 cards. Like, what if they did an event like this and you got Jeff? Like, it'd be great. People would be over the moon. It would be super duper cool. So I hope this is something that they saw as successful and they do more of in the future, because I think this is, I mean, it's not fixing card acquisition on its own, but it certainly doesn't hurt. And I think it helps the people who really kind of need the help the most. So yeah, I hope they do more with that, because I think it's a really good thing. It's been received very positively. Yeah, they're the 2 images. I love that. That's still one of my favorite Venom arts. So I'm probably gonna take Destroy for a spin when this drops, just because I like these variants and they're fun.
They are pretty
Um,
fun. Yeah, that's a good. Um, it's a nice little like Easter egg type of deal.
Yeah, it's cool. So hopefully we see more of that in the future, because I think it was a great little like thing to do, and it was so easy. Like there wasn't any like hoops to jump through. You just played with some of these cards. And you didn't even have to do it. All you had to do is play a game with one of those cards once, and you're getting the rewards. So it's really good. I think that was a really positive thing they did.
Nice. Yes, agreed.
But yeah, I think that about wraps it up. We're on the cusp of a new season. We got Ares next week, who I don't expect to make waves. People will play it in Surtur. I imagine not too many other places. I think it's the least exciting card of the season, even though it has a very cool animation. Where I do one thing I think one portion of Second Dinner that really deserves more credit than I think they get is their animation team. Their animation team is awesome, and they've only gotten better. Like the bullseye animation, even though it's annoying, gets fast forwarded half the time. Bullseye animation's cool. The fact that Ares has like you playing war with you and your opponent's deck. It's just they cook with the animations.
Rocket Raccoon and Groot has a
Yeah,
good
where he
animation.
like takes out the little sniper. It's super cool. It's
Yeah.
that's one of my favorite things. Like when they add new VFX and voice lines to old cards, like that's super exciting. Like I just love that. It really makes it feel like a more premium and kind of like a live product.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, definitely.
definitely warrants some praise there. But yeah, next season will be interesting. We'll talk about that more next time. I think it's in terms of cards, I think it's going to be a bit of a sleeper season, except for the battle pass. The battle pass, I think, is going to be pretty
Yeah.
exciting. So if you've needed a season to hold your keys, and you definitely will want to hold your keys because we have a new Celestial on the horizon that looks pretty insane.
And
I would hold for
if
March.
you collect reinvariants, and there's two people in my life who do, Zombies and Liacer, prepare to extract kidneys and sever arms and legs because there are a lot of them coming, and they look good.
Yep, there are quite a few, and she has art for all the new cards next month.
Brutal.
Every new one. That's why I've been saving the gold. I've been preparing. But yeah, it should be neat. Curious to see how all that. I mean, who knows? Like, I feel like the common consensus is that February is a bit of a sleeper right now. But I've said that, myself and others have said that about seasons in the past that ended up like doing better than expected. So only time will tell, and we'll definitely talk more about that once we're in the season of what is the theme? It's around Brave New World, right? With Sam Wilson, Captain America, Thaddeus Ross, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Should be neat.
All right. Well, before we go, I just want to thank everyone who joined us live. Really appreciate you having here and contributing in chat. For those that are watching us on YouTube, thank you. And of course, for those that listen on our podcast platforms such as Spotify or Apple, thank you so much for tuning in. I think a majority still consume this content this way. So thank you, especially since we don't necessarily always talk about what we're seeing on screen. I do think the most optimal viewing experience is on YouTube or catching us live. But either way, we thank you for joining us. And until next time, keep it Cosmo and enjoy your compensation. I'm sure there'll be lots of good splits and good cheer to share. And I look forward to a little bit of something to look forward to in Snap. So take care till then.
Keep it Cosmo.
Keep it Cosmo.
Enough said, bub.